Welcome to Bada Boom. On this episode, the release of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is just days away. And in a recent article in Variety, Warner Brothers Discovery has given their full commitment to gaming. But are they doing it for the wrong reasons? We discuss James Gunn and Peter Safran's involvement in game development at Warner Brothers and how a Superman game may be the solution to all of Warner Brothers' gaming problems. Listen in and bada boom. Hey guys, welcome to Bada Boom. Today, as no surprise as Suicide Squad is coming out soon, we're going to be talking more about some video games in the WBDC realm, mainly about how they're trying to push more into this realm themselves. Chris, you've sent me an article showing that, they've made a lot of money off Hogwarts. No surprise.
Yeah, they're printing money off of that franchise. Despite what people say, people love that world, and yeah, I'll just say that it's one of those things where people had said, "Hey, this game had no cultural impact or whatever," but it somehow sold 23 million copies, which is insane in any metric in any world, any way you slice it. So David Zaslav and Warner Brothers Discovery has seen that, and obviously, a company that is in a lot of debt, when they see something that is very profitable, like these games, you had that and Mortal Kombat 1, which sold over 1 million copies as well. They're looking at that as a way to find some profits. They're looking in the sofa cushions for ways to do that. But part of why we wanted to talk about it is that there were interesting tidbits in this Variety article about the strategy in terms of using Warner Brothers Interactive to leverage some of the IPs that Warner Brothers Discovery owns, and that's DC, obviously Mortal Kombat. They throw around Game of Thrones, obviously the Wizarding World. We'll probably see Hogwarts Legacy 2 in the future. With game development, it could be in 3 years, it could be in 10 years. But that's why we really want to talk about it, sort of how it ties into DC, its future. But yeah, what did you think about those comments? I had the president of Warner Brothers Interactive come on and talk about these things. And obviously it's a very business-driven article, but for fans, there's a lot in that in terms of knowing the strategy.
I'm not that excited about it. One, James Gunn said, I want video games to coincide with what's going to happen in that universe. And we haven't really seen how that universe is even going to be.
Yeah.
And we're going to have the Other Worlds thing, and they could be like, oh, this video games and Other Worlds thing. But I don't have a good vibe of them trying to see where the money's going to be. When money's the driving factor, I feel like they tend to just say, how do we make this the cheapest and the fastest and make the most money off of it? And that's rarely a recipe for success. So I really don't think that the games that they're going to be coming out on, they're going to say, we're going to use the names that people know and people like, but I don't think they're going to make high quality games. Maybe James Gunn can hold them back from a couple of things, but I hope they don't end up taking storylines that would be great in a movie and then use it in a video game, and then the video game sucks, and then no one wants to go see the movie because they're like, that's what the video game was.
That never stopped movie tie-ins back in the day. Yeah, it's interesting because part of why Suicide Squad is an interesting case study is because it took so long to make. It's a live service game. It seems that despite a lot of fans sort of having that backlash against these type of games, executives, they must be seeing something else in the numbers, because this keeps coming up. And in this article, live services is something very heavily pushed. And it is frustrating when the acquisition of WB Discovery, like when Discovery and Warner Brothers merged, a lot of these games that have this level of success, like Mortal Kombat 1 and Hogwarts Legacy, were probably in development well before David Zaslav took control of it. The same thing with Barbie. So some of these successes that they've had, and they've taken credit for, and we're going to do more of it. They're like, well, you really weren't a part of that success. And what's interesting is that the article almost seems like the way it's sort of framed is almost like they woke up one day and realized, like, oh my God, I just got a check.
Yeah,
Where did this check come from? And
they're
then
the
they're
other
like,
Tom Holland.
yeah, yeah, exactly. They're Tom Hollander. So they're like, where did this check come from? This makes money? What is this? They're like video games. They're like, video games make money? We can make money with this. So it is disappointing in that. But what was interesting to me was the fact that James Gunn and Peter Safran have been talking with WB Interactive. David Hadid or Haddad, who's the president of WB Interactive, was talking about sort of, hey, how we can leverage these IPs. The one thing I that was said that was also kind of like a little like enlightening and kind of like, hey, maybe they have their head in the right place, was the fact that they were like, hey, just because there's a Superman movie does not necessarily mean we're going to be forced in a corner to make a Superman game. Now, in a vacuum, that's like cool, calm, collected statement to say, but it is also coming on the heels of the Suicide Squad game, Kill the Justice League, coming out when people want a Superman game and thought Rocksteady was working on a Superman game. It's like, psych, we're actually working on an evil Superman game, which we've got plenty of. And we saw that in Injustice. We've seen that in comics. We've seen that made by other companies. I would actually be interested to see stuff like Creature Commandos be made into a video game. Booster Gold. These are all like properties that obviously could be successful as TV shows, movies, and stuff like that. But I think as video games, you have a lot more freedom to play with the mechanics and all that. But like you said, it seems like we're kind of going in the direction of like, oh, like we found a money pile. How do we add to this money pile? And it's really going to be disappointing when Hogwarts Legacy did not really have like, a live service or multiplayer element. So there's not like this huge like gross thing of like, buying a $70 game and then putting $200 more into it. And what's really messed up is like, yeah, the second one's definitely going to have that.
Yeah, I mean, I bet it's still going to be a great game. People in the wizarding world, like they love that stuff. Also, there's two theme parks just for Harry Potter in the United States. I've never been to a DC theme park. So that shows like how many people really want to play like Hogwarts Legacy and like how big that audience is. We're a big audience for comic books, and if they had a DC world or a real life metropolis, I'm sure we'd buy tickets to go there.
Well, there is one, but it's not in the United States. I think it's in Abu Dhabi. It's like a WB Worlds and stuff like that. I've seen people take photo videos. It looks amazing, but until I don't know, I think they have like a licensing thing with Six Flags. Like most DC things, you're like, what are they doing? But if it gets sold again and they get sold to Comcast, hey, Comcast owns Universal Studios, so hopefully, they'll turn that, Island of Adventure Marvel stuff. Let's just take that space, turn it into DC World.
There we
And
go.
hey, with the multiverse, you can expand it into the worlds of DC. I know we're talking about video games, but anytime the idea of a DC theme park comes up, I have to bring that up.
Exactly. No, it's well noted, well deserved. It needs to be brought up. It needs to be talked about more. I don't know why we're not talking about it more. But back to like video games though, again, it's one of those things where it's like you said, they just woke up and were like, we can make money on this. How do we make more money on it? That's great. We got money now. But like again, as we've talked about for movies and for lots of different types of media, when you just care about the story you're telling and want to make sure it connects with the fans, then it's a great product and people will buy it, even if it's unknown characters, if it's brand new, because it just connects so well. And this has the mindset of we've made all this money. How do we squeeze more money out of it? And like I said before, hopefully with James Gunn, he's like, hey, let me try and course correct the ship. And I'm a gamer, and maybe you'll listen to me on a couple of different things. But it doesn't. The announcement was not in the way of, hey, we saw these games did really well. We want to make sure we take care of that community by providing them with more great games. It's this announcement is we saw we made a lot of money. How do we make more money?
Not that I am a Warner Brothers Discovery shareholder, but they have almost led every like I feel like every 3 months, which is like a quarter. I see a headline from a an executive from that company touting the success of Hogwarts Legacy and the gaming division. But that game came out a year ago. Like it actually came out in February. So it's kind of like
Wow.
it's weird that they're still sort of hanging their hat on it, which it's a great success, like I've said. But what are you working on now? And it seems like they're just sort of using that gaming division and be like, hey, look, we know what we're doing. And I don't know if you know this, but if people listening to this, the reason we know Mortal Kombat was going to be like a reboot, or we knew it was coming before Injustice 3, was that Zaslav leaked it in a conference call, an earnings call. So the game hadn't been announced. They're playing coy about whether it'd be like, another Injustice or another Mortal Kombat. And it was leaked in an earnings call, which goes to show you that they don't necessarily know what they're doing over there. Because if they did, they would say, okay, like the response of Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. The game is not out yet, but it's clear that from the marketing materials and all that, that they failed in marketing that game. And who knows if it'll be a financial success, how long they've said they're going to be giving free content for players and all that. Let's see how long that lasts. Because we've seen developers, put out roadmaps and stuff like that. But, if they were really focused on this, what they would have done is teamed up with Gunn and announced, like, hey, we've already hired a development studio to work on this particular property, and they're working on that. Instead of being vague, of being like, hey, we know you own these properties. We know. That's why you get so much shit, is because, hey, you have all these properties and what are you doing with it? And it's a lot of like, these things take a long time. Movies take, a couple years. Some games like Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League can take 9 years to develop. So a lot of these things that they're talking about, we may never see under this leadership. I really wanted to talk about it because I think in terms of like games, as we saw with the Spider-Man 2 game, like sometimes that owns the conversation. That's how people are interacting with these characters more. That sold a couple million copies, which is insane at $70 a pop. So you want to see DC, and DC used to own this space. Like DC used to make the better games, used to make the better animated stuff. And now it seems like Marvel has the better everything. Outside of the comics, I think the comics are still better at DC. But you, as a DC fan, when you're like having those arguments, you used to be like, hey, Under the Red Hood, hey, Arkham. Like you had those arguments, like, and you wouldn't, and they weren't arguments because objectively you would win them. So it is disappointing to see them sort of like scramble and stuff. So I would love for them to, as difficult as it is, because it's never been done, to announce a Superman game and actually sort of make it in the vein of a Arkham or a Spider-Man, where it's the definitive, it's what people have been asking for. If you nail it, everyone will love you. If it fails, hey, there's 1,000 bad Superman games. It can't be that bad. It can't be as bad as Superman 64.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think from their standpoint, they're like, if we're, it's not their standpoint. I was going to say if they want to invest a lot of money into it, they want to make sure they get it right. But it doesn't sound like they want to invest a lot of money in anything. They want to make money fast.
Yeah.
And that's the problem is if you invest a lot of money, do the game right, get the story right, get the graphics to be beautiful, get the gameplay to be interactive and great, like how Spider-Man is, then you'll have no problem. You could take Green Arrow and be like, yeah, we're going to be just using our bow and getting around the entire city. But if the story is great, if the gameplay is great, people will be like, wow, I'm now the biggest Green Arrow fan. I never knew it was this cool.
And you could take properties like that, like for example, like a Green Arrow, right? I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff around the new Prince of Persia game, but the Prince of Persia game is a Like a Metroidvania is very simple. I don't even think it has like voice actors in it. You could do something simple like that where the development cycle is smaller, and you could give a smaller developer freedom to kind of play around with a character like that. And guess what? Instead of like investing in a show and stuff like that, you can invest in these smaller games, and then people can be like, wow, like I really like playing as Green Arrow. And the thing is, because they own all the rights and probably will never license out these things, some creative stuff doesn't happen. They all have to be published through Warner Brothers Interactive, which is good for Warner Brothers because again, they get those giant checks and they're like, oh my God, like we had a gaming division. But the drawback is they don't have what Marvel has right now, where Marvel for years were under like THQ or Activision, where like they're making like tons of bad games, but like, hey, like they had the license, so they were doing all that, especially with the Spider-Man games. But now, because it's free from all those like older deals, they could be like, hey, you guys want to make a Blade game? Awesome, make that. Hey, you guys want to make a great Spider-Man game? Awesome, make that. Guardians of the Galaxy, great game. You guys can make that. Avengers, not so great game. But guess what? It's balanced out by the other good ones. And then
Yeah.
we have a Black Panther and Captain America game coming out, written by Mark Bernardin and Amy Hennig. Bernardin has been on the show. So you have like all these different things that Marvel was able to do. And as exciting as the prospect of like, hey, like one person owning everything, we've seen based on like what Warner Brothers has done in terms of the decision making that they're not in a position to make the right decision. It's always going to be like, hey, money first, and we're going to rush this. Hey, instead of introducing the characters individually, we'll do Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice. We'll cut 30 minutes out of it, and money, money, money. And then it's like, oh, now you've destroyed the brand, and now it's hard to recover. So the same thing with everything else. I would just like them to make a good Superman game, and most people will be aligned with that. And I would like them to for at least like 5-10 years retire evil Superman. No evil Superman stories. If you are a comic writer and you go up to an editor and pitch an evil Superman story, we are locking your typewriter. If you're a game developer and you pitch an evil Superman story, we're breaking all of the like controllers in your office. Like no more of those stories.
Yeah, we don't need Superman to be evil anymore. We've got Homelander and we've got Omni Man. But on top of that, I think the silver lining that we may not necessarily be acknowledging is while they realize it's a good way to get money, hopefully they're also looking at how much money they might want to spend on a project, like you mentioned, and say, it costs hundreds of $1,000s to make a show, or I can give maybe a third of that to a game developer and they can make a game based on the character or the story that we have in mind and make it a game. So that's what I'm hopefully thinking that the Warner Brothers is taking away from this earnings and this big paycheck is that we need to just reconsider games as a storytelling method, and maybe we don't need to make a show all the time. Maybe we don't need to make a movie all the time. Maybe we can take a fraction or a third or whatever the budget is of that project and say, let's make a game instead and tell the story through that way. So that we don't, like you said, have these movies that are like, wow, that was terrible. We can tell you just did it for money. But instead, oh, you gave a decent amount of money to a game developer and so that's a good game.
Exactly. And this is something I think everyone listening probably has an opinion about this. Everyone plays video games now. You interact with it in different ways. And based on the conversation of Spider-Man, that has, in some cases, a far reach than some of obviously the comics. No comic is selling millions of copies these days. And then also, in some cases, the movies, like, hey, a movie's $10. Someone's spending $70 on this and spending hours in this world. So they're interacting with these characters in a way that sort of like really sort of keeps them within the brand. So from a business perspective, it makes sense. But again, if you're looking at one of those things where you're like, oh man, where did this check come from? I need to get more of these checks. and not seeing the real value of why you got that check. Hey, people made a really good game. In the case of Mortal Kombat 1, it's a great game, great brand, has a campaign mode that's very like singular and people like it. But that game did get some backlash because of some of the monetization tactics in it. And I think that has affected the longevity of that game. So, you have to be very careful with those things and not get too greedy. So Warner Brothers Discovery really has to, they have to really find a perfect balance with that. So hopefully with the games we see in the future, in terms of DC, I know Wonder Woman is on the horizon. I don't think we have any insight into any other things, but if they're smart, they are working on these new DCU projects. Hopefully Superman one, because if they get that right, it could rise to the level of a Batman Arkham or a Spider-Man. But what do you think? Let us know. And with that, bada boom.
Bada boom.
Thank you for listening to the Bada Boom podcast. Keep the conversation going on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Get in the comments on our YouTube channel and let us know what you'd like to hear next. And please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen.